screaming, "Move to Hamilton," and it redirected me to a suicide help website.
Well, I dressed up as a representative of Hamilton, obviously. I was hoping Bobby would do the same, but then again, how do you dress up as a welfare check? And
they considered changing the Hershey Center to the Herpes Center to better represent the city.
Most of the men in Thunder Bay look like they petted a rabbit to death at some point in their life. Bobby, what's it like to be from the only city that the natives don't want back?
Also known as Steel Town, because when you get there, it steals your wallet, your cell phone, and any ambition you had.
They call their university Lakehead.
All right, that was Hamilton versus Thunder Bay from last year at Comedy Bar with Bobby Knauff in studio today.
Hello.
And Gerry Hall, who's not here. And we've also got Ana Marija.
Hello.
Stojic from Holy Crap, So Many Things. You know what? I was struggling to figure out what we want to start talking about, but I just figured it out. You hustle so hard.
Mm-hmm.
I have theories.
Go for it.
Like Artificial, the podcast with a robot, so you're trying to outsource your own job, basically. Fuck Girls, the series, the podcast, obviously your own stand-up. Am I missing anything?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Probably some other stuff you don't want to. Yeah. So okay. So what is my theories are?
Yeah.
At the very bottom is you are possessed by the devil. Okay.
Okay.
I hustle too, but a lot of the stuff I do is illegal and profitable. So we're still everything in comedy here is Canadian entertainment. I'm like, where is she getting the motivation? Who's paying her?
Who's paying me? Nobody.
Okay.
So
Okay. All right. That's perfect.
Which makes the content so much better.
It
She
does.
controls it, and it's
All right.
yeah.
So like, okay, so you've got all these things that you're doing on top of your own stand-up as well.
Mm-hmm.
You're fundraising for Artificial, the podcast, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
What's the deal? Why? Where's this energy coming from?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess like a lot of my motivation comes from kind of like instinct. Like I don't always think about what I'm gonna do next. I just follow like a gut instinct and then do that thing.
Okay, yeah, that's good for this level or this particular kind of career, right? Because I find that a lot of comics, myself included, we kind of get into this groove and we don't think of all the other things we could be doing, right? A podcast with a robot, for example, right? So that's a cool thing to do. I find that, even like right now you're in the fundraising stage, right? For that. Is the robot not built or?
The robot's not built yet.
Okay.
So we're fundraising to get it built. I'm partnering with a AI company called Good Robot.
Good Robot? Okay.
Yeah. And
Toronto based?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
See, I think another theory is she is a robot, and this is her way for us to start accepting it. So when they take over, we're like, "Well, I heard him on the podcast. He was great robot."
I get it now.
Yeah.
You get it now.
And it could be a possessed robot too.
Well, she's already Eastern European, so I mean,
Eastern European robot.
Exactly. I mean, Eastern European people are
going to take our American robot jobs.
No, there are no American robot jobs. There are no Canadian robot jobs. Doug Ford canceled all of them. Like actually, yeah, sweet. Okay, we'll circle back to that. Bobby, you've been on this show before.
Yes.
You're looking forward to Sunday, September 2nd at Yuck Yucks.
Yes, because I want to take it back because Gerry beat me last time.
Oh, did he? I don't even remember.
Yeah, he got darker. I stayed at the same kind of level. It was one of my first like roasting, not like a person. Like it was my first time like doing one of these city roasts the shows you do, and so I was like learning, and he just was like ready.
Yeah.
And so I had a couple of really good ones, and then he hammered back, but then he had like two at the end that I was just like, I was like, if I win, this is wrong. Like that was too good of a joke. Like,
Gerry Hall
he's an amazing joke writer,
just incredibly prolific and always very, it's very punchy. It's hard to keep up that level, right? But
he doesn't have a wasted word. Like even just going through my old one, I was like, I could have taken that out. I'm milking that part where everyone was like, dun, dun, dun,
boom,
bam, bam.
He helped write a lot of the stuff for our Just for Laughs show in July, and he didn't even come. He wasn't even at the show. We're just like, hey man, you want?
But that's also someone who doesn't even want the spotlight, which is almost a better joke writer because they're like, this is the best joke. It needs to get on that stage.
Like
you
a
know?
pure writer.
Yeah, where I'm like, give it all to me. I want the credit and kiss me. Like where he's just like, this is the best joke. Get it out there.
Yeah, he also has a job and a family. And
Yeah,
like
I got nothing. I got 2 cats.
He's a probation officer, right?
Whoa.
Yeah.
So I may come in contact with him another way down the line.
He works for law enforcement in Hamilton, Ontario, so he's busy.
Good to know. I'm going to note that for the roast. Thank you. I did not know that.
Yeah, he's a probation officer. Make sure to use that. I mean, Hamilton that's probably the booming industry in Hamilton.
Yeah.
Like 80% of their people are on probation for something or the other. But yeah, so we're doing that on Sunday. So we're moving the show over from Comedy Bar, which has been like an amazing time there, obviously, but like we're moving it to Yucks because it's just a bigger place. Oh, look, the shrimp are here.
Oh my God, it looks so good.
All right, end the podcast now.
Yeah, we're done. This is why I came up.
But yeah, Yucks is like obviously a bigger venue. It's like 3 times the seats, right? So I'm expecting like a really big audience. One of the things we want to do going forward, and I want this on paper, is we're also going to hopefully get these roasts on audio across like satellite radio and stuff like that, and get you guys paid for these jokes that you've written once and done maybe a couple of times, right? Like both of you guys were remounting your battles from before. So you're repping York versus U of T, Sam Feldman, and you're doing Hamilton you're repping Thunder Bay versus Hamilton, right? Because with stand-up, I find you try to get as much out of that one set as possible, or every individual joke, right? You can sell it to different entities in different countries. You know, if we're lucky to do that, you tape it on CBC and you put on the States, maybe to the UK, blah, blah, blah. So why not do the same with roasts as well?
That's a good point.
Especially because that material you're not using as much.
Yeah,
so you almost want it out there because you're like, well, I'm getting seen by this many people. And then
I find so many comics who've done the show, Your Hood's a Joke, they try to like then use this material because it gets such a good reaction. But the difference is those people came for a roast, right?
Yeah.
So you might not necessarily, like, people will be surprised if you just start dissing Hamilton. I don't know.
Unless you're like in the city and you're ripping them off the top of your set kind of thing. But like other than that, that's all those jokes.
It just comes across as like mean.
Yeah. Why is he doing that?
Yeah. So I'm trying to get that whole manic energy you got going. Be like, all right, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do satellite radio. I'm gonna build robots.
I love that. That's my voice. I mean,
but that was, I think I'm pretty good at impressions.
Spot on.
For a second, I was like, there's 2 of them.
Yeah, exactly. We're like almost alike. Actually, that brings me to my favorite topic these days, which is like how much it sucks for white guys lately. I've been doing this on stage.
Look, we've had it the worst.
I know, right? I mean, I was talking about this with somebody. So, like, take the 3 of us, right? This is also a stand-up show.
Right now, this is perfect.
Like, if we took
we check almost all the boxes.
We literally do, right? Like, I mean, are any of you LGBTQ? Is that a fair question? Here. Okay, check. Right.
Immigrant?
Check. That's both of us.
both of
us. We're missing a woman of color, right?
Yeah.
Or that would have been, let's say, that spot. But 10 years ago, or even like 5 years ago, it would have been more like 3 spots would have been someone like you, and that final spot would be the 3 of us competing for one.
Yes.
I mean, that's just the truth. That's also been my experience, right? Things have changed to a point where now the white guy is the token person almost. They're like, oh, we're going to throw him in just to keep everybody happy, right? I've noticed that now, like, if you look at a lineup of 8, it's not 7 plus 1. It's more like 1 plus 7, right? It's not like 7 white guys and like 1 person who's either a woman, a minority, a gay person, things of that nature, right? So my problem with that is that's not exactly what people wanted when they wanted equal treatment. Right? It's not like, oh, now let's be racist against white dudes. Right? Because now your identity is a liability for you.
Yeah.
You know, it's new. That's a new feeling.
It's new, and it's like, it just makes you write better. Because, obviously... But then also, it's like, it hurts me, but then... Maybe this is going to sound like a dick, but it hurts other comics when I see just, like, straight white guy as a setup, it's, like, now airplane food jokes to the point where I'm desperate for an airplane food joke.
Right.
Like, it's just so many, like, unless you have a good one making fun of straight white dudes, it's hack already. Like it's already like, yep, okay, here's another one. Like, oh, that's me. You got it. To it. It's just the same thing that people were complaining about of like guys with their ex-wife jokes and women jokes, and those were bad.
Yeah.
No one like people like them, shitty people, but a lot of comics were looking at those jokes equally as like, oh my god, here's one of those.
I find checking myself when I start doing material like that, because I'm like, you know what? Even I'm getting tired of like picking on the white dude in the front row, which I did on Saturday, by the way. I
literally did it last night.
It works.
It went
and
amazing.
Sometimes it's like some people have amazing jokes about it, but they're just better joke writers anyway.
It's a hot night, and he was dressed head to toe all black, including his arms, and he had fingerless gloves, combat boots, a bandana, and sunglasses. He looked like a school shooter.
Yeah.
I had to call it out.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I'm sorry.
But calling for it.
But even then, even in that process, at one point I was like, is that too much? Like, are you finding that at all? Are you finding a little bit of like staleness in the new paradigm? Too many university words from a dropout.
Yeah. like in terms of little white guys sort of thing?
No. I mean, okay, so let's 3-4 years ago, or 3 years ago, I sold the set to CBC, and the whole first part of it was about white privilege, right? It was still a new-ish concept, hadn't been explored. It was like about this, that, and the other. If I try to do this joke now, it would even to me feel stale, because I'm like, it's not a new people are not only aware, but almost like circling around to like break it down and all that. So even our understanding of it has to obviously like evolve, and like the way we articulate.
Oh yeah, I think that our understanding is also evolving, because like people are discussing more like intersectionality and things like that, which is like super important to understanding privilege, because there's so many different ways that someone can be privileged in things that they were born in, and then also like nature and nurture.
Yeah, context. So, yeah, absolutely. Like in comedy, for example, to be a minority today is a bit of an advantage, because I can almost see it when I'm talking to a suit and I'm like pitching an idea. I can almost see it in their heads going, not only is the idea good, but...
So you can see the cartoon dollar
signs. Like, this guy's brown. I get points for that.
Well, that's what I think. Like, it's a really good part of it. Was like all you had was like white dudes talking about everyone's experience,
right?
And people were like, "Well, that's not representative at all." First of all, 50-50 is men and women, so why don't we see more women? And then also just like every other like
identity,
race.
Basically race.
And so now you're seeing that pop up a lot, and that's amazing. Like Netflix is sprinkled with everybody. It's almost like there's new ones coming out with people I've never heard of, and that's great. But then now, like you were like I was saying for a second ago, it was like sometimes those jokes are hack when you're saying like white privilege. We almost need like some white guy comedians to start actually turning it on themselves and talking about their privilege.
Yeah.
And then just the same way we wanted more voices and not white guys representing everybody. You
know how you said you have to be funnier now? That's how it was for minorities, let's say 10 years ago. Because when you're competing for fewer spots, you're like, well, I guess I just gotta be as funny as possible, so I beat out all the other women.
It's that pendulum. But before it was like amazing white guys and a bunch of mediocre white guys, and then like if you were gay, like a woman, any other, you had to really be amazing, almost better than those good white guys. And now it's swung over there. It's like minorities are really, really good, and then some of them are okay, and they are getting spots, and it's like, okay, that's the swing. That's how it happens.
I'll say it right now. There's some garbage comedians of color that I've been seeing on the internet.
That's a show title right there. Garbage.
On the internet, online, in person, on TV, just like there were so many garbage white guy comedians.
Where you're just like, you have a special? How the hell do you have a special?
Exactly.
Oh, you're a white dude. And same with now. It's like, oh, you have a special? You're that.
And on one level, I'm like, you know what? Go you, garbage comedian of color, because why
rake it in when you can.
Why not you get something?
Because that's what people forget about this. It's like so little based on talent, and it's all about just like getting those moments. And so if you can rake it in when you can, so that you can survive later when the pendulum swings some other way, do that. So you're a name.
But
I also wouldn't say that it's like complete. I wouldn't say that we're living in like a time where it's like completely swung the other way.
No. Sorry. I guess I'm saying from
swinging.
where our
like it's going there. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. Because you'll still see those shows where it's just a bunch of dudes.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, yeah, 100% hasn't gone here where like all white guys are like, I need a job.
Yeah.
For sure, not that at all. But it's like you're seeing it happen where like guys who would have gotten it before, you're just like, oh, they're disappeared. Yeah. And some people are like, you're not that good. And you've got Winnipeg. Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
the reason that I really like the like just more, I mean, like more diversity like across the spectrum is better for storytelling in general.
Of course, yeah.
And then the other part in terms of like more like minorities or just non-white people or non-straight people or whatever getting opportunities is that and somebody else explained this to me in a way that like super made sense to me is it's increasing the amount of chances they have to fail.
No, that's exactly what I mean. That when somebody who, in my opinion, let's say weren't good enough to get a shot, they got a shot. For me, on one level, I'm like, why are you? But on the other level, I'm like, yeah, why not you get the favorable treatment that you, like, none of us ever could have even dreamed of. We would have to be, like you said, like the best of the best of the best 10 years ago. Now I'm like, you know what? Yeah, you go get some things you didn't deserve. That's cool.
Exactly. Whereas, like, the whole time I grew up, even when I started stand-up, I was allowed to fail a bunch.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the people that were, like, watching or whatever were like, oh, he reminds me of me. So we'll stick him around. But if I was, like, a woman or just a different race, I probably either would have quit or been pushed out and not lasted as long as I did. But starting now, I probably would have been able to like find a community that would have accepted me rather than just it being that.
That's
like,
a really interesting point that I never thought about in terms of like people seeing themselves in someone and like how that changes like can change the course of someone's life in terms of like the amount of encouragement that they get. Like if there isn't people in positions of power that reflect the diversity of like a city or a nation, then how are you supposed to expect those people to make it further because they just won't see themselves in that person. They'll be
it's
like
too different. It's too weird. It's like I'll just go with this guy who he might be a little bit different from me, but reminds me of me, so I just fit in easier.
No, I find I do that too. I'll be like way more forgiving of like a brown comic. I'm like, nah, I used to do that, or you know, or just anybody. I'm like, oh, you weren't born here. Yeah, I totally get what it's like, you know, stuff like that. But if it's like a white dude, I'm like, fucking typical.
And that's where like I know it's gonna sound bad what I'm about to say, and that's where I feel a little bit bad for like young 19, 20-year-old white dudes. Like I just was dumb then, and I was dumb yesterday. Like I get smarter every day. I get smarter every day. So these guys who go on a stage and now have these people judging them like they should have had like a woman's course in university. Like, yeah, they should be smarter and the times are changing, but these guys are getting their heads bitten off. Like they're saying something stupid and they're going for shock because they're watching old guys that have went for shock go for it. And they're not giving the same like, oh, that guy's an idiot, he's going for shock. They're being labeled, he's a racist, he's a misogynist. He's like, no, he's a moron. Like,
and what
he's an idiot.
What ends up I find happening with a lot of these guys is it's not self-reflection. It's more like tripling down.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
100%.
I would have done the same thing if I was 20. I'd be like, oh, yeah, you didn't like it? Well, this... I'm using the same voice as I did for you. 20-year-old me sounded like present-day Ana Marija.
Well, that's it, too. When I was 19, 20, you told me what to not do on a show. I went and did that on a show. Thank God social media wasn't as crazy as it is now, because I would be friggin' like hated for some of the shit I said. I get hated for some of the shit I say now, and I know I'm like, ooh, I better watch what I say.
Well, that's things, even on that side, are evolving really rapidly. I think we're coming to a point where people are openly like, you know what, even if somebody said something 10 years ago, let's keep in mind that they were a different person, that they were like a different, you know, like a whole different circumstance, right? Because the things that are acceptable now will not be acceptable 10 years from now. I'm sure of it. There will be something that we're doing right now that we didn't know we were doing. Just like 10 years.
I can think of a bunch of things that we're already doing that are totally acceptable. That's like, that's not going to fly, like, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, that's not going to fly, but I shouldn't say anything. I want to get on some shows still.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to write this in a joke book and wait 5 years, and I'm going to look prolific.
But like when it's first, I don't know if I'm getting the timeline right, but one of the very earliest examples I can think of your actions from the past, like getting your job in jeopardy, would have been around 2012. Amy Schumer, when her specials really took off, 2012, 2013, and then like a year later, they're like, oh, look what she said in 2008 or 2007, and people went after her. Like inside Amy Schumer, how many seasons did it have till like all this controversy kind of like eroded its renewableness? You know what I mean? Yeah. There was a lot of like, well, a lot of Amy's jokes are like, basically men of color are rapists and women like to be raped and stuff like that. It was a very kind of obviously like triple X rated adult R-rated humor, right? But because I don't know if she actually believes that. I really don't think she believes the thing she says.
Well, but that also brings up kind of funny, like what we're talking about, the roast shows.
Trevor Noah, same thing happened.
Yeah,
yeah.
But it's like the roast shows. It's like because people know roast shows are bad, people know like you could say the worst things ever, and those still exist now, and they say the worst of ever. But then they'll take someone's stand-up special and go, "That was her personal thoughts." It's no, those were also jokes in a different setting. So why do we allow these roast shows if we don't allow comedians to do things in their own stand-up?
Well, that's where it is, like context. Yeah. I don't know if some people are not good at hiding who they are, and
wait, what do you mean?
There are comedians who use the stage as an outlet for their actual beliefs, right? Yeah. Whether it's racist beliefs, political belief, good woke thoughts, whatever it is. Like a lot of people use the stage as an outlet for what they actually believe, right? And that's what gets people confused. Like your everyday person, they're like, well, if to just use broad strokes, George Carlin meant what he said, then I'm sure Amy Schumer also meant what she said about Hispanic guys. Because her joke literally goes, I used to date Hispanic dudes, but now I prefer consensual. That was the joke, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, really? So as if Spanish guys don't already have it bad enough with stereotypes about being sexually aggressive and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
This was one of her biggest jokes from about 2008 or something. People were dying over it.
Right.
Right? And then 6 years later, that was getting her in trouble. That's what I mean about like the evolution of what people consider, oh, this is okay to laugh at now. I'm sure the same people 6 years later like, actually, no, that wasn't good.
Yeah. I feel like there's so many like layers to even just like that one story where like there's so many factors of like, well, who was in the audience at the time? Are there more like...
that's a good point, yeah.
Like... And who was like accepting this, who was making the decisions. Now we're also living in a different age in terms of like digital media and things like that, and like our taste and like what we consider to be successful or not is still curated by certain people.
Absolutely.
And it's like who's curating it, who's watching it, so I don't know.
But that's what I mean. Is it fair to relitigate something that happened before under a very specific, whatever the circumstances might be? It's immutable. We can't change that, obviously, but we can also understand that whoever did those things, like, give them a shot to be like, well, what do you think of this, instead of completely canceling them, essentially.
That's actually one of the things that I feel like hopefully won't be as like I hope that in the future we'll have more empathy towards each other, and that won't be like something that is kosher, just like exiling someone, because I don't think anyone does well. It becomes a better person when they're isolated from
it's a very
else.
hardcore game that's played, and it's, to watch every word you say, because the slightest deviation means you're actually going to get excommunicated from a whole group of people.
I do think that
but it is
extreme. I do think that people have the right, though, to be outraged. I think that
absolutely.
anger is good, and that like everyone, if someone has the right to say whatever they want, other people should have the right to.
Yeah,
react
you have to
however
deal with
they
the
want.
consequences.
Exactly.
No, absolutely. So that's what I mean is that. The range of consequences and the range of what should be punished is, well, at one point it expanded into pretty much anything you've ever said in any context. We're only going to take it literally, and now it seems to be shrinking back. We're like, all right, guys, we've had our fun. We've bullied the bullies, and now let's kind of see if we can move past towards more of an empathetic kind of a view, almost. Yeah. Ideally, maybe I'm being idealist.
Well, no, I would love that. Sorry, I keep interrupting. I just have one last thing to say. I would love that 100%. I feel like part of me is also a little bit pessimistic, because throughout time, there's always been a scapegoat in society.
Oh, yeah.
Someone to be like a certain kind of person, to be like, this is where everything bad lives. We're going to get rid of it, and then badness won't exist in ourselves.
Yeah.
And so, like,
white guys. All the bad things. Sorry, it's you guys right now.
Sorry.
It really is.
It happens.
It really is. Like,
we've all taken turns.
Yeah. No, I mean, actually, we've all taken turns. That's what I'm trying to get at. Is like, this isn't what people want. The people actually want equal treatment, not let's pass the baton of who's the asshole for the next 5 years to now you guys.
But also, it's a lot like all these people that do get fired for these things and then have to watch what they say. It's all, when you break it down, it's not these things that we're actually like, people are like, oh, I'm standing up for this because it's right. At the end of the day, it's money. Because the people that have to worry about getting fired are people that work for a big corporation, that they have to listen to the crazy people on Twitter being like, fire James Gunn because he said a bad joke 10 years ago, so he can't direct my Disney-made Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Stanhope, Joe Rogan, these guys have a bigger fan base when they say things that upset people because people want that.
Right.
Normal people who aren't doing it with their money, they're doing it with their mind.
Right.
Those people are fine and do well in this. It's all of us who are like even me sometimes like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I did a commercial last week for this and that's what pays my bills. I'm a sellout. You know what I mean? So it's always about who is footing the bill. So these people that set up for things or whatever, at the end of the day when they want people fired, it's just like religious beliefs are still causing so much like that person should be fired because they don't like Jesus or they said a bad thing about abortion because at the end of the day it's Johnson & Johnson's footing the bill for this thing because we don't give a shit when our politicians do even worse shit. We fire a fake president, not saying Kevin Spacey, what he did was okay, but we fired a fake president for doing something really fucked up where the real president gets to do that. Oh, Justin Trudeau, because he speaks really, really well and loves gay people and all that, he can sell shit to Saudi Arabia who kills gay people and fucking beheads them because they're gay. And that's okay because he speaks properly. But a comedian who speaks improperly needs to get fired because they get their bill from blah, 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 blah.
That's interesting.
It's fucked. It's ridiculous.
No, it is because that's what you described as free market capitalism.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it is. It's just like you can say whatever you want, but the market's going to decide. Like what you said. It's like you can say whatever, but there's going to be consequences, right? But it comes down to what is the range of consequences? How much of that is reasonable? How much of that is punitive? And then how much, and beyond punitive, how much of that is just pure vengeance, right?
Yeah.
There's that. There's like all these things. Like I totally understand. Like I mean, it's not really legal framework, but I understand like justice and punishment. But then when you go on to like extreme beyond that to revenge and
banishment, like you said, no one's gonna come back from that. You can't have a living. You can't make a living anymore. What do you want me to do? You basically are saying it without saying it because we don't like to use words anymore. Certain words are. You just want that person to die. That's all people want. Like they want people to actually die, but they can't say it like that, so they want you to never work again. Want you to be banished from the community you live in. What the hell am I supposed to do? Go live on an island and pick berries? Like you want people to die, but they don't say it like that, so they're fighting the good fight.
There are people I want to die. Yes, like, I mean,
very accurate.
There are very.
I don't. That's the thing. Like everything, it's like what you said too of pushing the bad out, and then you're gonna be pure.
Right.
That it's like people don't want to realize these people are people. If we have to go to space, they're still a representative of people.
I mean,
so we're not gonna be like, no, we kicked him out. Don't worry. It's like, no, you're not coming in. You still have that person in charge and this and that. You're all representative of one, but we want to separate more. So it's like, well, I'm not this white guy, so I've never done anything that they've done bad because that's their thing. It's like I'm not saying everyone's responsible for that. But we are a fucking race of humans, and we can't get along either. So it's like, you said, passing the baton.
Well, that's the primary like component of why I started doing Your Hood's a Joke, because I'm like, people are pretty fucked up. I've seen that around the world. You know, it's the same thing, just people give it different names. Here in North America, what's happening right now with a lot of, in particular, minorities, I count like pretty much anybody who's not a straight white guy is a minority, right?
Which is funny because it's like, there's more now.
But now, actually, no, still, straight white guys are still at about 60%, I think.
Oh, stand-ups?
No, as a population.
Oh, in
North America, right?
Sorry.
So I find, even initially, like, I mean, I've been here, 14 years, and like, the kind of racism here is different than the kind of racism you'd experience elsewhere in the world, and is also different from American. It's more polite here. But even then, like in present time, let's say like in 2012, when culturally there was like more identity politics and more questions about intersectionality and things like that, and how historical context, means there's implications for you right now. When there started to be consequences for white men, that's when I was like, well, that's nice, actually, finally. And I was kind of really getting into it. And a part of it was like, and this is for that time this one guy said something. And it's like, so I did feel it. I was just like, it's about time that the same consequences that apply to us apply to you.
Oh, for sure.
That was the thought process, right?
Yeah, and it's like, this is fucking great. And the dudes who were like, oh, it's like a witch hunt now. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, unless you've done something shitty that's about to come out from the past, it's not. I'm fine. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm like, oh, great. That guy fucking deserves it. That guy fucking deserves it. Sure, if someone yells at me when I'm saying something on a show like, oh, you fucking straight white guy, you can't say that. I'm like, you know what? I deserve to be yelled at. I'm in the Major League Baseball. You know, people yell at those people. I'm in the big leagues. Fine, yell at me. I'm not like, oh no, like they're gonna come after me because I don't have a fucking bunch of skeletons. That I have things I'm ashamed of as a human being, but not things that I'm like.
Of course, where would we be without shame?
Exactly. But I'm not like, oh, they better stop this like right now because really quick because my house is next. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
no, well, it's the consequence. It's good that people are throwing, it's a weird kind of equality, you know what I mean? Like, instead of being equally nice to everybody, we're like, let's just be equally shitty to everybody. That's...
Yeah, and that's definitely like a messed up way of looking at it.
Yeah, because...
it's like, we need to love.
just in the context of a comedy show, right? I would rather... It's, again, idealistic, pie in the sky, but I would ideally, if it's a show with 5 people, I would ideally see 5 of the best comics they could find, but which is also diverse, right? But often what ends up happening is they put, like, all these other requirements first, and then they look for the funny, right? It happened in a different context 10 years ago than it's happening now. But it's still, the talent is still not the primary focus in many cases. Not all. I'm finding that, like, even when they want to throw in the token white dude, sometimes even that dude isn't funny. I'm like, really? You had like 1,000 people to choose from. You found the one mediocre guy?
I think that also reflects just audiences too, because we like stand-up. So when we see a show, we're like, that person's good, this and that. Sometimes people don't even know what they're seeing. Yeah. Like, so many arguments that we as comedians get into of like, this show, blah, blah. Audiences are just like, it's a thing to do. And I'm not saying they're dumb. I'm just saying
they care less.
They care less about the quality that we think is quality. They think that's quality now.
But we also know what the quality can be. The reason I'm mad at this XYZ show for having a diverse but not as funny lineup is because I'm like, I know so many people who could have been on there.
I see that.
No, it's not that I'm like, oh, I hate that you're like shoehorning them. I'm like, no, there are people who are legitimately funny, but you're not. They might be not as good looking or media friendly. Know what I mean?
This is where the numbers play into it because now there's more shows. So even if you see that, and you're like, this person should. They're busy. Yeah, they're on a bunch of other shows because now that's needed. But then that's when it hurts a show because then it's like this person needs to be this, that. It's like they're all working right now.
They are.
You're literally grabbing someone who's done it twice to headline a show because they needed to check off your fucking boxes.
That's where it's like.
I mean,
really
that's
a good problem to have. I guess that I like as a problem. I like that because it helps me. It helps my people.
I'm just a bitter white dude.
Also, I think that it'll take like just a bit.
It's a transition.
It's a transition. It'll take a bit of time for the quality to catch up with the demographics.
And then something else will change too. We'll have robots.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Taking all of our spots, and then everyone's be like, damn you, Ana Marija.
Those robots had better be built by some brown kids.
Oh no. You don't like that.
Authenticity. No, but it is based in Toronto, right? So I'm sure that's true. No, I mean, robots doing jokes. I don't have a. You know what? Let them take the heat for a second. Let them say something.
They're allowed to be in movies all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So. No, I mean, this whole thing. I in Canada, it's a whole different conversation than in the U.S., right? Because again, mathematically speaking, how many? I'm going to use my example. East Indian comedians are there in Canada?
Yeah.
Not as many because there are. It's a factor of the population, right? So if there's if 5% of the population is brown, how many of those people want to pursue a career in stand-up comedy, right?
And there's also so many systemic issues that lead to like that discrepancy. For
I mean, I had to tell so many lies to get into comedy at home. Like my family didn't know jack shit about what I was doing because I knew they wouldn't approve, right?
Yeah.
And there are people who wouldn't even consider, not involving their families and things like that. So there's like cultural, issues. There's other systemic barriers as well. But even then, I find that because I do so many shows that have a diversity mandate, like I actually seek them out because I like doing them because I can tell jokes that a mostly white audience wouldn't get. I would have to explain so much. But if I do like a diverse show, they understand the dynamics I'm talking about instantly. You know what I mean? So that is a whole different audience that also came to the show because they want to hear something that they can relate to.
Exactly.
So these shows are bringing in people who normally wouldn't have come out. So they are expanding the audience base. Inclusive shows are expanding the audience base because those, like a person who goes to an inclusive show would have never gone to a comedy show
for sure.
Right? Even if they did once before, maybe they were like, well, that's not for me because holy shit, I felt not only unrepresented, I felt attacked.
Yeah,
by half
exactly.
the jokes.
Yeah, I mean, it's all these things. So I find that the base of comedy is growing.
Yeah.
Right. The reason I can do a roast show where a bunch of people insult each other's ethnicities and countries of origin is because there's more people who are like, yeah, I want to talk about even not just be represented on a superficial level, but on a more deep level where people are even addressing the issues in my own community.
Yeah.
But not a white guy, it's somebody who looks like me.
Yeah.
Right? It's one thing if it's like China versus Iran and it's a Chinese comedian versus an Iranian comedian, that's fine. But it's a white dude going, oh, well, fucking China and their weird habits, that's not a show.
Well,
but it was
hanging out with my
20
friends in
years
Thunder
ago.
Bay.
Yeah.
But 20 years ago,
yeah.
even 10 years ago, that was a show, right?
So a headlining show.
Yeah, exactly. So I find that stuff like that, it is expanding how many people want to watch, what kind of comedy they want to watch. You know,
and that's the other, I guess, misleading thing. Is like, I don't want to watch white dudes. I'm annoyed with them. Not only am I a white dude all the time, and I have to deal with my own voice. I don't want to hear 8 other ones.
Yeah.
I go to these shows that I'm not even like not allowed, but like not performing on because it's like, oh, here's a bunch of different point of views that I first of all don't have to worry about crossover jokes because that's also a worry I have when I'm watching like my good comedian friends who are white dudes, not the ones I have to listen to, and I'm like, shit, I'm writing that right now. Now I'm tainted. Whereas when I go to a different show, it's like, oh, here's a bunch of voices and stories that aren't like mine. I'm actually expanding that, and then I don't have to worry that our jokes are going to cross over.
You feel about white guy comedians the way I feel about brown guy comedians, where I'm like, no, don't say that. That was mine.
Yeah, I just wrote that yesterday. Damn it.
Do you find that at all?
Oh, yeah. I've definitely, especially like bisexual women, I'm always like, I'll keep an ear to, I'll like I won't be listening to anybody else's set, and as soon as they go on, I'm like, like my ears perk, and I'm like, oh, thank God they didn't say any of the stuff.
I guess like finally you guys are feeling that pain of mine when it used to be like only 8 other dudes on a show. I'm like, I gotta have like the best joke about this. Now I'm like, oh, sweet. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You guys can't be the tokens anymore. It's like, oh, I have all of these.
Yeah, I can do jokes about owning property. These guys don't know anything about this.
Getting the job's a breeze.
Yeah, exactly. What it's like to walk home at night all alone. Yeah, no.
I'm just writing a joke about that.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's good to know that everybody. Again, it's just pie in the sky idealism. I'm like, it would have been better if everybody was being good, but now I guess everybody's being equally shitty. So sucks for you. I'm
Not
sorry.
really. It's good.
The
The one thing I don't like is that it is putting this rift between comedians.
Oh yeah.
Like when I first started, even though there were a lot more white comedians, comedy felt like this misfit group that if you were good, accepted you. And so like my close friend, like Sandra Battellini and I and Phil Luzzi and I, a gay man and a woman, became my really close friends in comedy because it's just like, oh yeah, we're in this together. So now sometimes when these separations, it's like I'm not allowed to be in these groups because I now represent as a straight white guy comedian. It's like, we're the misfits. Like we're all in this together.
I was talking about this with somebody very recently because I do a lot of like roast shows or like shows with guys who wouldn't do the inclusive shows that I also do. Right? I don't see any reason why you can't do all of those shows. As long as you're not beefing with the people producing them,
yeah,
right?
I agree.
You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, so somebody's putting out a XXX rated show. You'd go do that if you have the range to do it. Another person's doing an inclusive show with all these restrictions. Treat it like a corporate. Go try some clean comedy, right?
Yeah.
But you don't have to be like, fuck that person.
Yeah.
They're always going to be this because one joke I heard from them, that's their whole personality.
It goes like
Both
either
ways.
the
Yes,
people are
exactly.
always sniping, right? You got people going like, you're not allowed to say that, and there's other people going, oh, you're just a fascist who doesn't want me to, say what's
you
on
only
my
play,
mind.
and people think exactly. Some dudes will think like, oh, they can only play to their audiences. It's like, no, they're a good comic. They just do those shows, and vice versa. Yeah,
just be professional and be like, okay, you don't understand that.
Yeah.
You don't maybe even value it or whatever, but it's just another form of the same art. Like, who are you to go around saying this is what this whole
and I think that's
art form is?
I think people underestimate the value of like being honest and nice in the business in terms of like, if I don't know, if someone comes to you like on both sides, if someone comes to you with like an issue with one of your jokes, like addressing it and listen and be like, this person was hurt, and like addressing their hurt.
because that, sorry, not to interrupt, but like that's exactly it. Because like that's so much more preferred. Let me know that joke might be hurting someone, or you were offended, or this did something. Because then I can work with that. And if I go fuck you, then I'm a dick. But if you hear that and then go tell other producers this person has a joke about that could be bad, how am I supposed to even know? And now I'm being labeled as this, like, he's a monster, this and that.
Are
and that.
you? What did you do then, man?
No, it's just from stuff in the past. You know what I'm talking about.
Okay,
Like, I got kicked off some shows because it's like, oh, he's that. It's like,
Well,
really?
see, that's what I mean is I understand not associating with people who are abusive.
Yes.
Like who are actually in their off-stage behavior, horrible people who are abusive.
Like, why would you want to work with that?
Yeah. Fuck, you don't need to work on their shows. You don't need to be with them. Feel free to tell other people about it. You know, that's on you. But if you just didn't like their joke, but they're like just regular people who have a different view of comedy, I think that's where I'm like, you know what? You could still be professional about it.
Yeah.
You know, you can still
sure.
be like, I'm not going to recommend your show to my friends.
Yeah.
And I don't do that. I never boost your stuff.
Yeah.
But
You
don't
go
go out
do
of your
you.
way to.
Yeah.
There seem to be people who want to watch your stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like
That's
what
the other part too. It's like, no, I'm a
Yeah.
professional.
Unless they're like out there going kill all brown people, you know, I'm like, okay, bro, like whatever.
I'm gonna tell people not to book that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like there's like a fear on both sides in terms of like someone who like Bobby, you were like, oh, if somebody doesn't like a joke of mine, why don't they just like tell me, or they felt hurt by it? And like I totally get that, but at the same time there's also people who have told other comedians that they were hurt by a joke and have been berated or cussed out or had a really negative experience. And then on the flip side, there's people who want to go to inclusive shows and then have felt who are like, for instance, a straight white guy, and they felt scared because they, you know, were kicked off a show or whatever. And I feel like there's like fear on both sides.
Oh yeah.
But there's not like there's definitely not enough communication, and fear is so overwhelmingly powerful.
Yeah.
That it's like that's a really real barrier that it would be great if we all like came together and tried to work on in terms of like bridging that gap, because that's an actual like true to life fear can like destroy nations.
Oh yeah, it definitely messes with your ability to like think and
Yes.
process what's being said to you, because you're now in survival mode, right? Like
Yeah.
there have been several times over the years, even like the earlier days, where somebody's like, well, here's why I didn't like your joke, and they point out something that I hadn't factored in at all, right? But even in those moments, I'm doing my best to keep it together internally, because all I can think is I'm being attacked.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just like yeah, all right, thank you. And then later on, I'm like, oh, I get what they were saying, but it takes so much of me, and it's just like an instinct. It's just coming out and be like, because on the other hand, I'm like, what if this person now goes around saying XYZ on the internet? Like, I'm thinking I gotta diffuse them, or do I? Like, it's a very mixed cocktail of emotions.
Oh, for sure.
When that's happening, and I find that, I guess, especially amongst comedians, not all of us are equipped to deal with that in the moment, right? Some people are just like, no, fuck you, you fascist, or whatever the equivalent would be. It's just, yeah, you're right about the fear aspect. It's not, it's not easy. But like, okay, cool. Well, that's great. On that note, I'm gonna start wrapping things up. Let's just talk about what we want to plug. Artificial. It's over here. So, Bobby, you're obviously doing September 2nd. Yuck
Yes.
Yucks. Your Hood's a Joke. Labor Day weekend. Everybody come out to that. Anything upcoming that you want to?
I don't have the dates on me, but doing Yucks gigs.
Yucks gigs.
Then the Two Sues have some shows and everything coming up.
Yeah, sweet. And obviously, Ana Marija, you got Artificial, the podcast.
Artificial podcast. We're funding on Indiegogo right now.
Indiegogo.
So you can find it at indiegogo.com/projects/artificial-the-podcast.
Okay, so just look it up on our Facebook and Instagram posts. We'll just include it in there. So next show will be Sunday, September 2nd. We'll might even have you guys back after to do like a post-show wrap-up. Who knows
great, yeah.
how many crazy things happen between now and then. Will we even stay friends? Stay tuned. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good night or afternoon.
Depends where you're listening.